Good afternoon, and welcome to the presentation on the Book of OUD. Strangely enough, the reason this book came about was this event about 2 years ago, when Michael Edwards, the guy that does the book of perfumes globally, he was actually presenting on OUD oil. And during the presentation, he asked a couple of questions which I answered. And in the end, I was invited up to talk a little bit more about OUD oil. The reason I know about OUD oil is because the company I'm with, APC Group, we are the world's largest sustainable plantation manager, which produces the OUD oil. And what was clear in the event a couple of years ago was the lack of understanding of where OUD comes from, or the challenges that OUD faces because the trees are actually critically endangered, and also there's a huge amount of illegal trade. So we thought it would be very good to actually get involved and commission a book to explain all about OUD, its history, the challenges that are faced today, and also a remedy, how we see a collaboration with a new company that can actually help legalize and standardize the trade of OUD in the future. In terms of, if you look back where it comes from, this is what I'll be talking about. It's basically the history, the actual trees called Aquilaria, where the OUD is generated from, what applications OUD is used for, perfumes, cosmetics, etc. Some of the challenges I just mentioned, the illegal market, product tampering. A lot of OUD which is traded is actually blended or diluted, and it's not the real deal. Grading, analysis, and how we can actually testify that there's a pure, real OUD, and it's not one of these illegal products. And also then about the future, what I believe we can do. So in terms of, as a background, OUD is a remarkable substance. It's been around for thousands of years. It's actually generated in nature as a result of an injury to a tree. So these trees called Aquilaria, if they are, for example, if there's a termite, an ambrosia bug, for example, a beetle, burrows into this tree, the tree has a biological reaction, and it creates a natural defense, which is a resinous heartwood, which fights the infection. It's that resinous heartwood which is used to be distilled and produce OUD oil. The challenge is that in the wild, there's only about 5% of the trees actually have the resinous heartwood. And therefore, because of the values of OUD, there's a lot of illegal deforestation. People chop down the whole forest just to find the few trees with the valuable resinous heartwood. I won't go through this. So in terms of history, if you look back at the history of OUD, it's been around for thousands of years. It's referred to in pretty much every religion. It's in the Old Testament, the New Testament. It's referred to in the in ancient Chinese scriptures. It's actually one of the original traditional Chinese medicines. So you'll find reference to OUD, and particularly in the Gulf, in the Middle East, where it's used extensively. Again, it's referred to in the Quran. So it's got a tremendous history dating back literally thousands of years. So where does it come from? OUD is actually only produced in Southeast Asia, where the Aquilaria tree grows. It's been tried in other regions, but it's failed, and that's because of all the soil, the climate, the water, everything else. But Southeast Asia, it's where it's widely grown. And there are a few species which are generally used in the perfume industry and cosmetics, which are Krasna, Malacensis, and 2 or 3 others. So it's been around, as I say, for thousands of years. It's used as medicine. It's used in rituals. It's a remarkable substance. So how do we address the fact that the oud, only 5% of the trees carry this resinous heartwood? Well, Asia Plantation Capital, what they've managed to achieve is working with universities in Asia, they've developed some organic compounds, which what they do is they inoculate a tree with this compound, and it recreates the same biological reaction that happens in the wild. So the difference is 100% of the trees are then able to produce oud oil. So this, in the long term, is the only viable supply chain for the future of the industry for oud, because the wild plantations are being deforested, and they're actually now listed as critically endangered by CITES, CITES is the Convention for International Trade of Endangered Species. It's in Geneva. So they've listed this tree as critically endangered because of this illegal deforestation. So sustainable plantations are really the way forward. So just looking at the images there on the top left, you have a typical nursery plantation for a sustainable plantation. Then on the right, you see the saplings, which are probably about a year to 18 months old, which is when they're transferred from the nursery to the final plantation. The bottom left is the inoculation process. So this organic compound, which has a lot of IPP, is injected into the tree, which then creates this resinous heartwood. And on the bottom right there, you see the distillery. There are many types of distillation, but steam distillation is widely accepted as probably the best mechanism for getting the optimum quality and quantity from the tree. I like to refer to oud. It's very similar in many respects to fine wine, fine red wine. Why? Because it appreciates with age. In the same way as a good vintage wine will appreciate in value, it's exactly the same with oud oil. So APC, what they do, I'll come on to another company, are commissioning a series of vaults, which are around Asia and the Middle East, which will actually house different vintages of oil, which can be held for investment or can be held for future usage. So, yeah, it's, you know, there's many types of oud. Each country has its own variation, and then the main species are the Krasna, the Subintegra, and the Malacensis. So each one, the oud has its own notes, its own quality and characteristics. So there are many applications. In the cosmetic world, for example, it's now used in a range of these products here, which are skincare, anti-aging, which, again, history going back in time, being a traditional Chinese medicine, they've been using this for thousands of years for skin treatments, for digestion problems, for asthmatics. It's got a whole range of uses, and it's still used widely today. So it's used in cosmetic products. It's used in fragrances, and we have Nicola with us today from Fragrance de Bois. The reason Fragrance de Bois are here is because APC, the company that is the largest global producer, have a supply contract with FDB to provide them with the oud oil, which is 100% pure, which goes into their fragrances. And Nicola has a couple of examples of a pure oud spray and one of the perfumes, which you're welcome to sample later. It's used in drinks in the beverage world. Again, this goes back to the medicinal qualities. So there are a range of teas and also coffees where the oud is actually put into a powder form and then goes into a range of drinks. Probably the most common usage, if you've ever been to the Middle East, to the Gulf, and you see them burning the incense, what's called bakhor, this is generally the agar wood, which is from the same tree. This is the wood before it's distilled to oil. So it's burnt and it gives off this wonderful aroma, very heavy, rich aroma. So that is huge market, and particularly in China. In China, they use incense sticks for oud, which is a huge business. Literally, if you ever go to China in the cities, you'll find dozens of stores which sell these little incense sticks, which are using the powder from the Aquilaria tree. It's made its way into the fashion, into jewelry, and there are agarwood bracelets, which again, they've got that aroma, so you can actually, it has its natural aroma, but you can also scent the beads. So for example, if you spray them with one of the fragrances, it holds that fragrance for a long time. And it's reputed to have some, medicinal benefits. In Asia, there is another small niche opportunity, which is for sculptures. I know in Hong Kong, in a store in Hong Kong, there is a sculpture the size of a turnip, a vegetable, which fits in your hand, which is $500,000. So some of the sculptures, and that's for a very old, it's like 100 years old piece of agar wood. It's almost black, very, very rich in its aroma. So sculptures are very popular in China. And the Chinese will travel extensively around the Gulf, around Asia, to try and locate pieces for art collections. The medicinal side I mentioned, it's used in a whole range of supplements, for digestion aids, for respiratory. There's actually some research being commissioned in Asia right now, where there are studies being done on the effects of oud in the treatment of skin cancer. So there was I believe, an 8 million grant by the Malaysian government, 8 million ringgits, to look at because they've seen it used for, again, thousands of years, that they've now commissioned authentic research to try and back this up. Coming on to the challenges. The issues, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest single issue is the illegal deforestation. Because of the values involved, this bottle of oud here, there could be $20,000, for example. Depending on the age and the quality and the grade, it could be substantially more, but that one is about $20,000. So it attracts a lot of attention, and a lot of the trees now have been destroyed in the wild. For example, the Krasna species in Sri Lanka was wiped out. It was extinct. We reintroduced it there several years ago, so it's actually back now in Sri Lanka. That's one major challenge. It's the illegal deforestation. The second challenge is the black market. If you're producing oud in Asia, the only way you can legally export it to the perfume or cosmetic world is if you have CITES accreditation. You have to have a piece of paper as a CITES document which allows you to export. If it's being moved any other way, it's illegal. We believe still today about half of the global trade, we think it's about $20 billion total, so probably up to $10 billion is illegal trade today. It's a huge challenge. And the third challenge is actually with the mixing. So particularly in the Gulf, there are a lot of stores in the souks, in shops, which are selling oud oil, which has actually been diluted or mixed. It's not pure, and it has no certification, no certificate of origin, no grading analysis. So people are being sold oud on the pretense that it's oud, but in reality, it's really an inferior product. The distilleries, as I mentioned, this is one of our distilleries in Malaysia, which is I think this is a 4th generation distillery now. We do a lot of R&D to try and maximize the quality and the quantity of oud that we produce. And this is the latest one down in the south of Malaysia. So the future. The future is what we are trying to achieve. There is a company It's called the Sustainable Asset Exchange, SAX. And the purpose of this company is to create a trading platform for essential oils, but it initially focused on OUD. And to be able to trade on this platform, you have to enroll as a buyer or a seller, and they will only accept authentic OUD on the platform, meaning it has all of the provenance. It has, the origin, it has the CITES certification, it has the grading of the oil, so you know what grade, we know what year it was produced, we know what species the tree has come from. So from a buyer's perspective, perfumers can see this trading site, they can say, okay, this one here, this looks really interesting. They can order a sample of that oil to be sent to them, they can try it, it'll be in one of the vaults I mentioned earlier, and then that will be then sent to them in their wherever they are for them to either do the GCMS analysis or to smell and decide if they like it. If they like it, they can buy then the larger volume and have it sent to wherever they are. So the exchange will be using what we want to do on this is to create a site of people in the industry. So basically, to come onto this site as a trader, we need to see that you're an authentic trader. So you'll enroll. We will offer small traders. The plan is there are a myriad of small producers in Asia that have fantastic trees, which could be 10, 15, 20 years old or more, but they don't know how to get the value from the tree. They don't have the know-how or the finance to actually deliver the high-quality oud from the trees. So we're working together with SAP, and they have a software program which is called Rural Sourcing Program. And what it allows the small farmer to do is a very simple application which allows him to be able to sell his product internationally. How will we do that? It's simple. As APC, we will approach these small farmers. And if they have, let's say 1,000 trees, we will say to them, if you sell your oud oil today, you sell it at a very, very cheap price at the gate. For example, it could be $100 for a toller, which is ridiculously low, but they've got nothing to substantiate the quality or anything else. That's all they can achieve. So what we will offer them is said, first of all, we will inoculate your trees with our system. We will do the distillation for you. We will have the grading and the certification analysis done. And we will then put it onto this trading platform where you, as a small producer, can probably get 3 times or more what you're getting today. Now, obviously, we will, as a company, we will have an interest in that. But it allows all of these small farmers to have a much higher return and get a lot more oud, in many cases good oud, onto the market. So that's essentially the plan for the business. I have to say there's a couple of slides missing. This is an old version, not the one I actually was expecting. But I have a short video which I'd like to share, which basically just tells you about this sustainable asset exchange, how that will work, what the plan is, and then I'm happy to take any questions. And I've got some oud here, and what I'll do is I'll just pass around some strips with the oud so you can actually smell it and see what a genuine. This is a 2014. This was distilled, so I'll let you have a sample of that. Can we play the video?
For thousands of years, oud has long been recognized for its fragrant properties and use in perfumes, medicines, and incenses in the Middle East, Asia, and Western countries. Extracted from the wood of the agarwood tree, oud oil remains one of the most sought-after resources in the world, with an estimated global market value of 10 to 20 billion US dollars. Despite the introduction of regulatory and environmental policies in the early 2000s, CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, estimates over 50% of the agarwood harvested each year still comes from illegal traders, resulting in the tree's dire classification as a critically endangered species. As global supply of wood oil declines, so does its purity, with processors often diluting or mixing supplies with inferior oils to maximize their return. All this is extremely bad news for the wood industry. But there is hope. The introduction of blockchain technology now makes it possible to digitize, legalize, and standardize the wood industry, while incentivizing wood processors to only purchase wood from CITES-certified sources in an effort to achieve long-term sustainability and curtail widespread agarwood deforestation. To do this, we've created the world's first wood-based ecosystem, otherwise known as the Sustainable Asset Exchange, or SAX, a unique platform that allows members to convert crypto, fiat currencies, and special assets in frictionless transactions via smart contracts. As the only legally certified wood trading platform in existence, SAX member transactions help facilitate greater transparency, control, and regulatory influence over the wood trade to minimize illicit activity while promoting trade in pure, sustainable, and legitimate wood oil. SAX is supported by an ecosphere of sustainable plantations, including Asia Plantation Capital, as well as a number of wood and ancillary industries, such as perfume manufacturers, perfumers, and traders. Entirely paperless, SAX functions as a fully digitized trade flow and gives its members and users the opportunity to access multiple asset classes through one single global exchange. All trading information is shared in real time, and all transactions, including relative documentation and legal titles, are recorded on the blockchain. The result is revolutionary, one-of-a-kind global trading platform aimed at disrupting the wood industry with the hope of building more transparent, sustainable, and lawful practices. To learn more about the SAX exchange, check out our next video, or to purchase legally certified wood and other high-value natural assets, visit www.sax.exchange.
So that gives you just an insight into the plans for this new platform. Happy to answer any questions on OUD or what the production of OUD. Anything out there?
You talked about OUD being very similar to fine wines. In a way, you have different vintages, different years. So in different regions, is there a different sort of they have different issues, different soils, different type. How do you differentiate? A bit like wine, different regions.
Yeah.
What is it in the soil or in the environment that creates that difference between the type of foods that you're able to offer?
Yeah, so the question was how do the vintages, how do they vary in terms of the value and the quality like fine wines? And very similar to wine, a lot of it comes down to the soil. It has to be a loamy. There's a particular soil which we've, over many, many years, worked out is the best. It's a loamy soil. It also has to do with a number of other factors. The micro, around the plantation. For example, in our own plantations, we've found that by planting banana trees interspersed with the Aquilaria trees, the banana trees put a lot of nutrients into the soil. And that helps with the growth of the Aquilaria tree. So it accelerates the growth. And then also, as I mentioned, there are different species and also altitude. We've found that, for us, we typically look for plantations which are 300 to 800 feet above sea level for various reasons, including we don't want to be on a floodplain. So, the soil is critical. We actually still conduct a huge amount of R&D on trees, but it's a very long process before you see the results. Because, a tree, the absolute minimum age before you can inoculate a tree is 5 to 6 years. And then you have to wait a further 2 years before you have the results. So it's a long period to assess the results of different compounds, different species, etc. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it varies by country, by species, by soil. We typically drip feed on the plantation with water. We just use drip feed irrigation. In several plantations in Thailand, in Malaysia, because of the water, because of the rain there, we don't need to irrigate. There's enough natural, but we still have a backup in terms of reservoirs in case there is a dry period.
How many different types of oud are there? So, for instance, if Chanel, just like they like a certain type of rose oil, wanted oud, and you had an ability to be sustainable over a period of time, but you'd identify that as being specific to them, can individual perfumers choose and purchase individual types of oud?
I think there are two main veins of oud. There is the wild oud, which is not the one where we inoculate the tree. It's the natural one, which is much rarer, much higher in value, and typically a niche perfumer may be seeking those for a limited run, for example. The bigger perfume houses that are looking for the biggest challenge in oud is consistency. If you're producing an ongoing supply of a perfume, you would like the same oud oil to be used over a period of time. Now, that's extremely difficult for two reasons. One, unless you have a sustainable supply source that has enough volume to satisfy that, number one. And two, oud changes over time, naturally. So even if you take a big stock today from this plantation, in 2 years' time, the oud will have changed. The makeup of the oud will have changed. So that will have an impact on the perfume as well. So it's a difficult substance to pin down. But obviously, the perfumers work their magic with whether it's the sustainable oud or the pure oud to create the two variations. Any other questions? No? Good. Okay, well, thank you for your time. I'm here, cards, if you want to. We've got a couple of perfumes there, one with the pure oud spray and another one with a creation called Sahara Oud, which is very popular with FDB in terms of, particularly in the Middle East, I believe. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.